My name is Alana, and 3 years ago, I married Nathan Cross, one of the most powerful CEOs in the country. I know what you're thinking. Another gold digger story, right? But here's the thing. I never wanted any of this. I was perfectly happy working as a librarian in a small town, reading books and living my quiet life. Then Nathan walked into my library one rainy Tuesday, looking for a book on ancient history, and everything changed. When people hear I'm married to a billionaire, they automatically assume I hit the jackpot, but living in Nathan's world feels like wearing shoes that are 2 sizes too small. Everything looks perfect from the outside, but inside, you're constantly uncomfortable. The charity galas, the business dinners, the way people look at me like I'm some kind of puzzle they can't solve. I've learned to smile and nod, but I've never truly felt like I belonged. Our mansion has 42 rooms, though I've only been in about half of them. It sits on 12 acres of perfectly manicured gardens, and sometimes I feel like I'm living in a museum rather than a home. Nathan tries to make me feel comfortable, but he doesn't understand that comfort isn't about thread count or marble countertops. It's about feeling like you deserve to be where you are, and honestly, I'm still working on that part. Today is our 3rd wedding anniversary, and Nathan insisted on throwing a party. Not just any party, a grand celebration with 200 of the city's most influential people, politicians, celebrities, business moguls, and their wives who lunch at country clubs I can't even pronounce the names of. When Nathan told me about his plans, I felt my stomach drop. 3 years of marriage, and I still get nervous when more than 5 people are looking at me. If there's one person who's made sure I never forget I don't belong in this world, it's Victoria Cross, Nathan's older sister, and my personal reminder that I'm not cut out for high society. Victoria is everything I'm not. Sophisticated, sharp-tongued, and absolutely ruthless when she wants to be. She's also beautiful in that cold, untouchable way that makes people step back when she enters a room. From the moment Nathan introduced us, Victoria made it clear that she thought I was temporary. She'd smile with her perfect white teeth and say things like, "Oh, how quaint that you work with books," or, "I'm sure you'll find your feet in our world eventually." Every conversation felt like a test I was failing, and she kept score. What makes it worse is that Victoria has been married 3 times, and each marriage ended more spectacularly than the last. Her first husband left her for his secretary, the second one turned out to be cheating with her best friend, and the third one simply vanished one day with half her trust fund. You'd think someone with that track record would be a little more humble about giving relationship advice, but Victoria sees my happy marriage as a personal insult to her expertise. She's never said it directly, but I know she thinks I trapped Nathan somehow. Like I cast some kind of spell over her brilliant, successful brother. The truth is, Nathan chose me, and that choice has driven Victoria crazy for 3 years. She watches us together with the intensity of a scientist studying a specimen she can't quite categorize. Over the years, Victoria's comments have gotten sharper, more pointed. She's mastered the art of the backhanded compliment, the subtle dig that leaves me questioning myself for hours afterward. Nathan doesn't see it, or maybe he chooses not to. Victoria is careful to save her worst behavior for when he's not around, and I've never had the courage to tell him just how cruel his sister can be. The morning of our anniversary party, I woke up with that familiar knot in my stomach. Nathan was already up, standing by our bedroom window in his silk robe, looking out at the staff setting up tables in the garden. He turned when he heard me stir, and his face lit up with that smile that still makes my heart skip. "Good morning, Mrs. Cross," he said, crossing the room to kiss my forehead. "Ready for tonight?" I wanted to tell him I'd rather hide under the covers until everyone went home, but instead I smiled and nodded. Nathan has this way of making everything seem possible, even when I feel like I'm drowning. He pulled me close and whispered, "You're going to be perfect tonight. You always are." But as the day progressed, my nerves only got worse. The caterers arrived at noon, transforming our home into something that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Florists brought in arrangements that probably cost more than most people's cars, and the staff polished every surface until it gleamed. I felt like I was watching someone else's life unfold around me. Then, at 3 o'clock, Victoria arrived. She swept through the front door like she owned the place, which, in many ways, she acted like she did. She was wearing a black designer dress that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe, and her hair was styled in that perfect way that takes hours to achieve but looks effortless. "Alana, darling," she said, air-kissing my cheeks. "I hope you're ready for tonight. The Hendersons are coming, and you know how particular Margaret can be about proper etiquette." Before I could respond, she was already critiquing the flower arrangements. "These centerpieces are a bit much, don't you think?" I would have gone with something more understated. But then again, I suppose not everyone has an eye for true elegance. Nathan was in his study, taking important calls, completely unaware that his sister was already picking apart every detail of our celebration. I followed Victoria around like a nervous hostess, watching her find fault with everything from the champagne selection to the placement of the string quartet. "I just want tonight to be perfect," I finally said, my voice smaller than I intended. Victoria turned to me with that smile that never reached her eyes. "Oh, darling, don't worry. I'm sure it will be memorable." Something in her tone made my blood run cold, but I couldn't put my finger on what exactly she meant. As the afternoon wore on and the first guests began to arrive, I had the strangest feeling that this party was going to change everything. I just had no idea how right I was. By 7 o'clock, our mansion was filled with the most powerful people in the city. I stood in the grand foyer, wearing a midnight blue dress that Nathan had specially ordered for me, trying to look like I belonged among senators, Supreme Court justices, and tech billionaires. The champagne flowed like water, and the conversation buzzed with the kind of insider knowledge that moves stock markets. I watched Nathan work the room with the ease of someone born into this world. He commanded attention without trying, his laugh genuine as he discussed business deals worth more than entire countries' budgets. I felt proud watching him, but also incredibly small. These people spoke in a language I'd never learned, not French or Italian, but the subtle code of old money and new power. Victoria glided through the crowd like a shark, stopping to whisper in ears and laugh at private jokes. I caught her pointing in my direction more than once, followed by knowing looks and raised eyebrows. My cheeks burned with embarrassment, but I kept my smile plastered on. "Mrs. Cross," a woman approached me, her diamonds catching the chandelier light. "I'm Margaret Henderson. Victoria was just telling me about your humble beginnings. How refreshing to meet someone so genuine." The pause before genuine felt like a slap. I mumbled something about being happy to meet her, but she was already moving away, having delivered her subtle message. I was different, and everyone knew it. As the evening progressed, the whispers became harder to ignore. I caught fragments of conversations that made my skin crawl. "Gold digger?" someone muttered behind their champagne glass. "She must be something special in bed," another person snickered. "I give it another year before he comes to his senses." Victoria seemed to be everywhere at once, dropping little poison pills into conversations. I watched her lean into Mrs. Patterson, the wife of a federal judge, and saw the woman's expression change from polite interest to barely concealed disdain as she looked in my direction. Nathan was trapped in a corner with 3 senators, discussing some upcoming legislation that would affect his business empire. He kept looking over at me, giving me encouraging smiles, but he was too far away to hear what was happening. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of silk and diamonds, gasping for air while everyone around me pretended not to notice. The breaking point came when I overheard Victoria talking to a group of wives near the dessert table. "She's sweet, really, but you have to understand, she worked in a library before this. A small-town library. I'm sure she's doing her best to adapt, but some people just aren't cut out for this level of society." My hands shook as I set down my champagne glass. 3 years of biting my tongue, 3 years of letting Victoria's cruelty slide, and I'd finally reached my limit. I don't know what gave me the courage, but I found myself walking straight toward Victoria's group. The conversation stopped as I approached, and I could feel every eye in the room turning toward us. Victoria's smile faltered for just a moment before she recovered. Alana, darling, we were just discussing the charity auction next month. Perhaps you'd like to contribute something? Maybe a book recommendation?" Her voice dripped with false sweetness, and the other women tittered. "Actually, Victoria, I'd like to contribute some honesty to this conversation." My voice was steadier than I felt. "I know you've been telling everyone that I'm some kind of fraud, that I don't belong here. But the truth is, I've never pretended to be anything other than what I am." The room grew quiet, conversations stopping as people sensed drama unfolding. Victoria's face went pale, then flushed red. She'd been caught, and she knew it. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, but her voice was shrill now. "I've always been supportive of your adjustment to our family." "Have you?" I asked, my voice getting stronger. "Because for 3 years, you've made it clear that you think I'm not good enough for Nathan, that I'm some kind of opportunist who trapped your brother." Victoria's mask finally slipped completely. "Because that's exactly what you are," she screamed, her voice echoing through the suddenly silent room. "You're a nobody from nowhere who saw an opportunity and took it. You think I don't see through your innocent act? You're nothing but a common gold digger who got lucky." The slap came so fast I didn't see it coming. Victoria's palm connected with my cheek with a sound that seemed to echo through the entire mansion. 200 people gasped in unison, and I stood there, my face burning, tears streaming down my cheeks. That's when I heard Nathan's voice, cold and deadly quiet, cutting through the silence like a blade. "Victoria, what the hell have you done?" The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Nathan stood in the doorway, his face a mask of controlled fury that I'd never seen before. He wasn't just angry. He was dangerous. The powerful men who'd been laughing with him moments before now took unconscious steps backward, recognizing something primal in his expression. He walked toward us with slow, deliberate steps, his eyes never leaving Victoria's face. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, senators and billionaires suddenly finding their shoes very interesting. Nathan Cross was worth more than most small countries, and everyone in that room knew better than to be on his bad side. "I asked you a question, Victoria," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, but somehow carrying to every corner of the room. "What did you just do to my wife?" Victoria's bravado crumbled. She looked around desperately for support, but the people who'd been laughing at her cruel jokes moments before were now studying the artwork on the walls. "Nathan, she was being disrespectful. She accused me of telling the truth." Nathan interrupted, his eyes finally moving to my tear-stained face. The rage in his expression softened when he saw me, replaced by something that looked like pain. "Are you hurt, love?" I shook my head, unable to speak. Nathan reached out and gently touched my cheek where Victoria's hand had left its mark. When he turned back to face the room, his expression was terrifying. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to commanding boardrooms full of powerful men. "I think it's time you all learn the truth about my wife." What Nathan said next changed everything I thought I knew about my own life. The words hit me like a physical blow, and I had to grab onto a nearby chair to keep from falling. "My wife, Alana, is not the simple librarian you think she is. She's the sole heir to the Morrison fortune, one of the oldest and wealthiest families in America. Her trust fund alone is worth more than most of your net worths combined." The room erupted in shocked murmurs, but Nathan wasn't finished. 3 years ago, when I met her, she had no idea about any of this. Her adoptive parents, God rest their souls, never told her the truth about her birth family. They wanted her to have a normal childhood, away from the vultures who circle inherited wealth. I felt like I was having an out-of-body experience. The Morrison fortune? I'd heard that name whispered in the same breath as Rockefeller and Carnegie. These people couldn't be talking about me, the girl who'd grown up in a 2-bedroom apartment above a bookstore. When I married Alana, I had her investigated, not because I didn't trust her, but because I wanted to protect her from exactly this kind of treatment. I've spent 3 years letting her believe she was just a librarian, because she was happy that way, because she didn't need to know that she was actually wealthier than most of the people in this room. Nathan's voice grew harder as he continued, "I've watched my sister and many of you treat my wife like she was beneath you, like she was some kind of charity case I'd taken pity on. The truth is, she could buy and sell half the people in this room without even touching her principal." The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria looked like she'd seen a ghost, her face pale and her hands shaking. The same people who'd been snickering about the gold digger were now staring at me with a mixture of shock and embarrassment. "But here's what makes this even more perfect," Nathan continued, his voice taking on a satisfied tone that sent chills down my spine. "Victoria, you've spent 3 years convinced that my wife was after the Cross family money. You've been cruel and condescending, treating her like some kind of social climber. But the truth is, she's been supporting half the charities in this city through anonymous donations that I've been managing for her." He pulled out his phone and started reading from it. "The children's hospital wing that was donated last year? That was Alana's money. The scholarship fund for underprivileged students? Alana's money. The homeless shelter that serves 3,000 meals a month? Also Alana's money." Victoria's face went from pale to green. She looked like she was going to be sick. That's not possible. She's just a librarian. She doesn't have that kind of money." "She has more money than you'll ever see in your lifetime," Nathan said coldly. "And unlike you, she's never needed to marry for financial security. She married me because she loves me, not because she needs me. Can you say the same about any of your 3 marriages?" The crowd was eating this up like the most entertaining show they'd ever seen. These people lived for drama, and Nathan was giving them front-row seats to the most spectacular takedown in high society history. "As for the rest of you," Nathan said, addressing the room, "I hope you've enjoyed gossiping about my wife's supposed gold-digging ways. Because tomorrow morning, when the story of tonight breaks in the society pages, you'll all be remembered as the people who were cruel to one of the most generous philanthropists in the city." He put his arm around me, and I leaned into him gratefully. "My wife has been nothing but gracious to all of you, despite your whispers and your cruelty. She's been kinder to you than you deserve, and she's been more generous with her money than you'll ever know." The room was so quiet now that I could hear my own heartbeat. Nathan's revelation had turned the entire social hierarchy upside down, and everyone was scrambling to figure out where they stood in this new reality. The party ended quickly after that. People made their excuses and left, but not before stopping to apologize to me with the kind of desperate sincerity that comes from realizing you've just insulted someone who could destroy your social standing with a single phone call. Victoria tried to approach me, tears streaming down her face, but Nathan stepped between us. "You're not welcome in our home anymore," he told her quietly. "You've had 3 years to treat my wife with respect, and you chose cruelty instead. I won't give you another chance to hurt her." After the last guest left, Nathan and I sat in our living room, still in our party clothes, trying to process what had just happened. I kept staring at him, this man I'd been married to for 3 years, wondering how many other secrets he'd been keeping. "Why didn't you tell me?" I finally asked. "Why let me think I was just a poor girl who got lucky?" Nathan took my hands in his. "Because you were happy," he said simply. "You were the first person I'd ever met who loved me for who I was, not what I could give you. When I found out about your inheritance, I realized you were also the first person who could love me without needing anything from me. I didn't want to change that." He was right. If I'd known about the Morrison fortune, everything would have been different. I would have questioned every friendship, every kindness, wondering if people were being nice to me or to my bank account. Nathan had given me something more valuable than money. He'd given me the freedom to be myself. "I love you," I whispered, and for the first time in 3 years, I said it without feeling like I owed him something in return. As for Victoria, she learned that actions have consequences. Nathan cut her off from the family business, and word spread quickly through high society about what she'd done. The same people who'd laughed at her cruel jokes now avoided her like the plague. She'd built her identity on being superior to others, and in one night, she'd lost everything that made her feel important. But the most important thing I learned that night was that real love isn't about what you can give someone or what they can give you. It's about protecting each other, even when the other person doesn't know they need protection. Nathan had spent 3 years shielding me from a world that would have treated me differently if they'd known the truth. He'd let me be happy in my ignorance, and that's the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. Sometimes the people who love us most are the ones who know exactly what we need to hear, and exactly what we need to never know. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is let someone slap you in front of 200 people, just so your husband can show the world exactly who you really are.